This is a review of the IRAP as a response, time, and event-related potentials methodology for testing natural verbal relations, a preliminary study by Barnes-Holmes, Hayden, and Barnes-Holmes, conducted by Samuel Cruz. The study had 28 undergraduate participants, 11 male and 17 female, with an age range of 18 to 30. 16 participants were in the experimental group and 12 were in the control group. The study was conducted in a small, quiet room and participants went through the IRAP on a personal computer. During each trial, 4 words appeared on the screen. An attributes, a stimulus of pleasant or unpleasant, was featured on top, a target word in the center, and the relational terms similar and opposite were presented at the bottom left and right. Below are some examples of the screens presented to the participants. The participants were told to choose one of the relational terms presented, which were either consistent or non-consistent, that was deemed to be correct for the trial. Choosing the correct term removed everything from the screen before beginning the next trial. Choosing the incorrect term produced a red X on the screen, and the next trial did not start until the correct term was chosen. Each group was split into 2 groups. One group was in a consistent relations first group, and the other group was in a inconsistent relations first group. Each group was presented with 8 blocks that consisted of 24 trials with 12 words presented twice. The 12 words were presented both as inconsistent terms and as consistent terms, to total 24 altogether. For the consistent relation first condition, odd blocks, such as blocks 1, 3, and 5, had reinforcement for relationally consistent responses, and even blocks, such as 2, 4, and 6, received reinforcement for relationally inconsistent responses. The opposite was true for the inconsistent relations first response, in that odd blocks were reinforced for inconsistent responses and even blocks were reinforced for consistent responses. A control group was also run. The control group had the words similar and opposite replaced with the words cug and zid. Besides these changes, everything else was the same for this control group. A second study was conducted in the same manner as the first study, with a new group of participants, except that the participants were hooked up to an EEG reader. The results of the study found that the mean response latency was shorter when the consistent response was reinforced than the inconsistent response. The control group did not have a significant difference in the means of response latency across the 4 conditions of the 2 groups. A 2x3x2 repeated measure ANOVA was used with the IRAP conditions and the first through third paired blocks. The ANOVA ran on control groups found no significant difference on the main effects or interactions. The experimental group showed an IRAP effect, but that did not show in the control group. I'm going to begin discussing the strengths and weaknesses by discussing the type of design used for the study. A crossover multiple design treatment was the one that most closely resembled the design used in this study, as the different conditions used across the groups resembled 2 treatments, and both conditions were given to each group with the order switched. For example, the reinforcement for consistent response was given first for the consistent response first group, and the reinforcement for inconsistent response was given second for that group. The opposite was true for the inconsistent response first condition. The use of a control group to support the alternative hypothesis that the relations held by the words consistent and inconsistent have an effect on the response latency of participants taking the IRAP. Because there is a significant difference in the experimental group but not in the control group, and because the words consistent and inconsistent are the only alterations in the experimental study and the control study, it can be said that the pre-established relations in the words consistent and inconsistent led to a change in response latency. The use of random group assignment into conditions helped to protect against systematic differences in the group under each condition, which made it less likely that differences in response time were due to some inherent difference within the groups. However, I found several weaknesses within the study. First, there was no random assignment to experimental and control groups. Because of this, there is a potential risk of internal differences in groups contributing to the results. The sample used most closely resembles a sample of convenience, and this sample has the risk of sampling bias, as well as the risk of the sample not representing the population we are trying to infer information from. As the entire sample consisted of college students for both experiments, the sample may not be very generalizable to anybody except college undergrads. And finally, there were no steps taken to protect against the carryover effects that were inherent in carryover designs. Because of this, participants' results and latency may have been affected by previous exposure to prior trials, as there did not appear to be any rest periods between trials, and participants went from one trial to the next immediately.